Truth doesn't bend, Julian. Imani's words sliced through the clamor of LAX, sharp as a blade honed by years of chasing stories. Her arms ached, cradling Noah and Naomi, her 4-year-old twins, as she navigated the terminal's chaos. The air was thick with jet fuel and impatience, travelers jostling past her like waves crashing on a shore. Her braids hung loose, her blouse bore the faint stain of spilled formula, and the backpack slung over her shoulder sagged with the weight of diapers and dreams. She was bound for Charleston, her mother's porch, a beacon in the storm of her unraveling marriage to Julian. 7 years of love, now frayed like a rope stretched too thin. Noah's sneakers kicked against her hip. "Mama, I want juice," he whined, his voice a small spark in the din. Naomi, quieter, hugged her stuffed giraffe, her eyes wide as saucers. Imani forced a smile, murmuring, "Soon, baby." Her gaze swept the terminal, restless, a journalist's habit never fully dormant. Then she heard it, a laugh, sharp and familiar, cutting through the crowd like a siren. Julian, her Julian, who'd kissed her goodbye 2 days ago, claimed a Miami work trip. She froze, her pulse hammering. Across the terminal, at the first-class counter, he stood. Julian, a 35-year-old white man with tousled blonde hair and a tailored blazer, his charm as polished as ever, was leaning toward a woman who gleamed like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Clarissa. Her blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves, her silk dress clung to her frame, and a designer bag dangled from her wrist, winking under the fluorescent lights. They were laughing, their shoulders brushing, an intimacy that twisted a knife in Imani's gut. Miami, a work trip. The lie burned hotter than the betrayal. Noah tugged her hand, his voice piercing the haze. "Mama, why's Daddy with that lady?" The question was a match struck in darkness. Imani's vision narrowed, the crowd blurring to shadows. Her feet moved before her mind caught up, pulling her twins toward the counter. Each step felt like wading through quicksand, but her spine was steel. She stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the flicker of panic in Julian's blue eyes as he turned. Clarissa's gaze slid over her, cool and dismissive, as if Imani were a smudge on her perfect world. "Julian?" Imani said, her voice low, steady, a blade sheathed in calm. "A work trip, huh? Miami, right?" The words hung heavy, laced with accusation. Julian's smile faltered, his pale hands hovering as if to deflect her. "Imani, this isn't what it looks like," he stammered, his voice cracking like thin ice. Clarissa tilted her head, her lips curving into a smirk that screamed privilege. "Is there an issue here?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension, as if Imani were a child throwing a tantrum. Imani's eyes locked onto Clarissa's, unflinching. "No issue," she said, each syllable deliberate. "But you can't hide from the truth, Clarissa. Neither of you can." She turned, pulling Noah and Naomi close, their small hands grounding her as she walked away. Julian's voice chased her. "Imani, wait, let's talk." But it was swallowed by the terminal's roar. Her chest burned, not with tears. She'd shed enough of those. But with a fire she hadn't felt since her days chasing scoops in New York's underbelly. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a story, raw and pulsing, and she'd write it with every ounce of her being. The escalator hummed, carrying them toward baggage claim. Noah's questions faded into a soft mumble. Naomi's giraffe pressed against her cheek. Imani's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. Julian's late nights, his evasive texts, the way he'd stopped meeting her gaze. She'd been blind, lulled by love and motherhood, but no more. Her phone vibrated, a text from her mother, Eleanor. "You landing soon, baby?" Imani didn't reply. She pictured Charleston's quiet streets, the creak of her mother's porch swing, the salt air that might clear the fog in her heart. But clarity wasn't enough. She needed justice. A speck of sand from Noah's shoe caught her eye, glinting on the polished floor. It was a fleeting image, but it seared into her mind, a reminder of how fragile Julian's lies were, built on shifting ground. She hoisted Naomi higher, her resolve hardening like clay in a kiln. She wasn't just a wife, a mother. She was Imani, the woman who'd once toppled a corrupt councilman with nothing but a pen and grit. Julian thought he could erase her, rewrite their story with Clarissa's shine. He was wrong. The conveyor belt rumbled, spitting out suitcases. Imani watched them circle, her mind already drafting the first lines of her counterattack. She'd lost her husband, but she hadn't lost herself. The truth was her weapon, and she'd wield it until the world saw Julian for the fraud he was. Noah leaned against her, sleepy and trusting. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Her eyes burned with purpose, fixed on the horizon. This wasn't about saving a marriage. It was about reclaiming her story, and she'd write it in fire. The Charleston air hit Imani like a warm embrace, heavy with salt and the promise of refuge. She stepped off the plane, Noah's hand sticky in hers, Naomi's giraffe dangling from her other arm. The terminal was quieter than LAX, its low hum a balm to her frayed nerves. Her mother's house awaited, a sanctuary where she could breathe, think, and plan. Julian's laughter with Clarissa still echoed in her skull, his pale face, an easy grin, a wound that pulsed with every step. But Imani's fire hadn't dimmed. It burned hotter, fueled by the truth she'd vowed to wield. Eleanor's porch creaked under Imani's weight as she dropped her bags, the twins scampering toward their grandmother's open arms. Eleanor, silver hair pulled tight, eyes sharp as a hawk's, enveloped Noah and Naomi in a hug that smelled of lavender and wisdom. "My babies," she murmured, then fixed her gaze on Imani. "You look like you've been through a storm, child." Imani sank into a wicker chair, the weight of betrayal pressing her down. "It's worse than a storm, Mama," she said, voice low. "It's a betrayal." Eleanor didn't flinch. She settled across from Imani, her hands folding like a judge preparing a verdict. "Tell me," she said, and Imani did. Every detail of Julian's lie, his pale hand brushing Clarissa's, her smirk, the sand-speck moment that crystallized her resolve. Eleanor listened, her face unreadable until Imani finished. "He didn't just betray you," Eleanor said, her voice cutting like a blade through fog. "He's trying to erase you, your babies, your history, for a shiny new story with that woman. Men like him build castles on sand, Imani. They crumble." The words landed like a spark on dry tinder. Imani's chest tightened, not with pain but with clarity. Erase her? No. She was no footnote in Julian's tale. She was the author now. "I'm not letting him," she said, her voice steady, a vow. Eleanor nodded, a glint of pride in her eyes. "Good, but you don't fight a snake with tears. You need a plan." That night, after tucking the twins into bed, Imani dialed Maya. Her best friend's voice crackled through the phone, sharp and electric. "Imani, you okay? You sound like you're plotting a war." Imani laughed, a brittle sound. "Maybe I am." She recounted the airport, Julian's lies, his blonde hair catching the light as he leaned toward Clarissa's arrogance. Maya didn't hesitate. "He's building a palace on lies, and we're the goddamn tsunami. What's the play?" Imani paced the porch, the wood creaking under her steps. The salt air carried a faint grit, like sand sifting through her thoughts. "I'm a journalist, Maya. I dig. I expose. Julian's tied to Clarissa's family, some big project her daddy's bankrolling. I need to know why he's really with her." Maya's laugh was a whip crack. "Oh, we'll bury him. I've got contacts, digital dirt diggers. We'll find the cracks in their story. But we need to be smart. Time it right, hit them where it hurts." They mapped it out under the Charleston stars. Step 1, dig into Julian's role in the project, likely tied to Clarissa's father, a real estate titan with a shady reputation. Step 2, gather evidence, emails, contracts, anything proving Julian's work trip was a sham. Step 3, craft a story not just about betrayal, but about the systems that prop up men like him. Maya's voice grew fierce. "This isn't just your fight, Imani. It's bigger. You're exposing the game, how they use people, discard them. We'll make it a national conversation." Imani's fingers tightened around the phone, her journalist's instinct roaring back to life. She'd spent years chasing stories, but this one was personal, raw, a blade she'd sharpen until it cut clean. "I'm writing an article," she said, "not about me, but about what they're hiding. I'll need your help to make it go viral." Maya chuckled. Viral? Honey, we'll make it an earthquake. As the call ended, Imani stood at the porch railing, staring at the moonlit yard. Noah's toy truck lay, abandoned in the grass, dusted with sand from their earlier play. Sand again, shifting, unreliable, like Julian's promises. She thought of his voice at LAX, smooth and false, and Clarissa's smug glance. They thought they'd buried her in their lies. They didn't know she was a seed, ready to break through. Eleanor stepped out, a mug of tea in hand. "You're not sleeping tonight, are you?" she asked, her tone soft but knowing. Imani shook her head. "Not yet, Mama. I've got work to do." Eleanor handed her the tea, its warmth seeping into her hands. "Then do it right. You're not just fighting for you. You're fighting for those babies, for every woman who's been erased. Make it count." Imani sipped the tea, the steam curling like a promise. She wasn't the broken wife Julian expected. She was a journalist, a mother, a force. The truth was her weapon, and she'd carve a path through their lies. Charleston's quiet nights would be her forge, where she'd craft a story to shake the world. Julian and Clarissa had no idea what was coming. The Charleston night was thick with humidity, wrapping Imani like a second skin as she hunched over her laptop on her mother's dining table. The house slept. Noah and Naomi tucked into dreams. Eleanor's soft snores drifting from upstairs. But Imani was wide awake, her journalist blood humming. Julian's betrayal wasn't just a personal wound. It was a thread she'd pull until his whole world unraveled. Her fingers danced across the keys, chasing the truth through digital shadows, the glow of the screen her only companion. She'd spent days digging, fueled by coffee and Eleanor's quiet strength. Maya's contacts had delivered. A leaked email here, a public record there, each piece a shard of a larger mosaic. Julian's role in Clarissa's father's project, a sprawling, sustainable urban development backed by the tycoon's empire, was no accident. Imani's research uncovered a pattern. The project, touted as a beacon of progress, was under fire for its shady funding. Julian, with his clean-cut charm and photogenic smile, was their perfect frontman, a polished figure to deflect criticism. Not a visionary architect, but a pawn. The realization hit like a fist. Julian hadn't just betrayed her, he'd sold himself, trading integrity for a seat at Clarissa's table. Imani's lips pressed tight, her mind flashing to the sand-dusted toy truck in the yard, a symbol of how easily Julian's foundation crumbled. She opened a new document, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. She wasn't writing as a scorned wife. She was writing as Imani, the journalist who'd once toppled giants. The title came first, The Architecture of Deceit, when progress is just a facade. Each word was a bullet, loaded and aimed. Her article took shape, sharp and surgical. She wove in the project's questionable finances, citing public records that hinted at offshore accounts. She exposed Julian's role, not by name, but as the chosen face of a campaign built on lies. The piece wasn't about her pain. It was about a system that propped up frauds like Julian while discarding those who dared speak truth. Her prose was clean, relentless, each paragraph a brick in a wall of evidence. She cited sources, cross-referenced data, and layered in quotes from community activists who'd long suspected the project's motives. It was airtight, undeniable, but doubt crept in, a shadow at the edge of her mind. Late at night, when the house creaked and the twins' soft breathing filled the silence, Imani questioned herself. Was this too personal? Would exposing Julian's world taint her integrity? She stared at a photo on her phone, her, Julian, his blonde hair catching the sun, and the twins at a beach, sand clinging to their feet. The memory stung, but it also clarified. This wasn't revenge, it was accountability. She called Maya at dawn, the sky bruising purple outside. "It's done," Imani said, her voice steady but tired. "The article's ready." Maya's response was a low whistle. "Damn, girl. You didn't just write a story, you built a bomb. Where's it going?" Imani hesitated, her finger tracing the edge of her laptop. "The National Chronicle. My old editor Sarah will get it, but I need guarantees, protection, anonymity for now." Maya laughed, fierce and bright. "Smart. They'll eat it up. This is bigger than Julian, bigger than you. It's a reckoning. Imani emailed the draft to Sarah, her message blunt. This could spark a firestorm. Stand behind it, or I walk. Sarah's reply came within hours. It's bold, Imani. We'll need to verify every word. But if it holds, we're in. Imani exhaled, a weightlifter, but her pulse raced. She was stepping into a battlefield, and Julian wasn't the only enemy. Clarissa's family, with their wealth and reach, would hit back hard. As she closed her laptop, Noah stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Mama, you up all night?" he asked, climbing into her lap. Imani kissed his forehead, her heart swelling. "Just working, baby," she said, smoothing his curls. Naomi followed, dragging her giraffe, and Imani pulled them both close. Their warmth grounded her, a reminder of why she fought. Not just for herself, but for them. To show them a world where truth could stand tall. Outside, the morning breeze stirred the yard, scattering sand from the twins' play into thin, fleeting patterns. Imani watched it shift, her mind sharpening. Julian thought he could bury her in lies, but he'd underestimated her. She wasn't just a mother or a wife. She was a force, her pen a blade that would carve through his facade. The article was her first shot, and it would hit its mark. The Charleston dawn broke soft, but Imani felt a storm brewing. She sat at her mother's kitchen table, the glow of her phone casting shadows across her face. Her article, The Architecture of Deceit, was with Sarah at the National Chronicle, under review, its truth a live wire waiting to spark. Noah and Naomi's laughter echoed from the living room, where Eleanor played with them, a fleeting shield against the chaos Imani knew was coming. She sipped her coffee, its bitterness mirroring the dread curling in her gut. Julian and Clarissa wouldn't let her strike go unanswered. Her phone buzzed, a notification from a news site. Her name was trending, but not for the reasons she'd hoped. A blog post, posted overnight by an obscure outlet, labeled her a disgruntled ex-wife weaponizing journalism. Comments flooded in, anonymous, vicious, digging up old articles she'd written, twisting typos into proof of incompetence. "Imani's just bitter," one read. "Has been chasing clout." Her stomach churned. This wasn't random. It was orchestrated, a blade aimed at her credibility. Maya's call came like a lifeline. "Imani, you see this crap online?" Her friend's voice crackled, sharp with outrage. "It's Clarissa's people. Her daddy's got a PR firm on speed dial. Crisis management sharks. They're trying to bury you before your article drops." Imani's fingers tightened around her mug, her knuckles whitening. "They're scared," she said, voice low but steady. "Good. Let them squirm." Maya snorted. "Scared, sure, but they're not playing nice. Watch your back." The attack was surgical. By noon, a prominent columnist, someone Imani had once admired, published a piece questioning her objectivity, hinting she was using her platform to settle personal scores. Social media amplified it, bots and trolls piling on with hashtags like "Wishing Imani lies." Each jab felt like a grain of sand in an open wound, grinding deeper. She scrolled through the venom, her heart pounding, until a memory flashed. Sand scattering from Noah's toy truck, fragile and fleeting. Their lies were just as brittle. She wouldn't break. Then Julian called. His number flashed on her screen, a ghost from a life she'd thought was hers. She answered, bracing herself. "Imani," he said, his voice cold, stripped of the warmth she'd once loved. "You need to pull the article. You think you're smart, but you're burning your career to ash. I know how much it means to you. Stop this, or I'll make sure you're done." The threat was a blade, pressed close, but Imani didn't flinch. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore, Julian," she said, her tone ice. "You made your choice. Now face mine." She hung up, her hands trembling, but her resolve ironclad. Sarah's email came next, a gut punch. "Imani, the piece is strong, but these attacks are raising flags. Legal's nervous. We need to talk." Imani's breath caught. Even her allies were wavering. She paced the kitchen, the floorboards creaking under her weight. The twins' giggles felt distant, like a song from another life. She'd poured everything into that article, her skill, her pain, her truth, and now the world was turning against her. Clarissa's family, with their wealth and connections, was a machine, grinding down anyone who dared challenge them. Eleanor found her staring out the window, the yard dusted with sand from a morning breeze. "You're carrying too much, child," her mother said, her voice a steady anchor. Imani's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. "They're trying to erase me, Mama," she whispered. "My work, my name, everything." Eleanor's hand gripped hers, firm. "They can't erase what's true. You're stronger than their lies. Don't forget who you're fighting for." Imani nodded, her gaze drifting to the twins, now sprawled on the rug with crayons. Noah's drawing, a lopsided house, reminded her of the life she'd built, now cracked but not broken. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for them, for a world where her children wouldn't grow up under the shadow of their father's deceit. The attacks hurt, but they also revealed Clarissa's fear. If they were hitting this hard, Imani's article was a threat. She was close to something big. She opened her laptop, skimming the latest smear, a tweet claiming she'd fabricated sources in past stories. Lies, but clever ones. Maya texted, "They're desperate. Keep pushing." Imani's jaw tightened. She wouldn't pull the article. She'd double down. The truth was her shield, and she'd wield it until Clarissa's empire cracked. She drafted a response to Sarah. "Verify every word. I stand by it. This is bigger than me now." Sending it felt like firing a shot into the dark. The day waned, the sky bruising purple. Imani stood on the porch, the salt air sharp in her lungs. The sand in the yard shifted, forming fleeting patterns, a reminder of how fragile her enemies' defenses were. They thought they could bury her in their noise. They didn't know she was a storm, gathering strength. The fight was far from over, but Imani was ready to strike back. The Charleston night pressed against Imani, heavy with the scent of salt and doubt. She sat on the edge of her mother's guest bed, the house silent save for the soft creak of old wood. Her phone glowed with venom, another wave of online attacks, branding her a liar, a bitter ex-wife. Clarissa's PR machine was relentless, grinding her name into dust. Sarah's hesitant email echoed in her mind. Legal's nervous. Even her allies were faltering. Imani's fingers hovered over a photo on her phone. Her, Julian, his blonde hair bright in the sun, and the twins at a picnic, sand dusting their feet. The memory clawed at her, whispering, "Was this worth it?" She stood, pacing to the window, her reflection a ghost in the glass. The smear campaign wasn't just about her article. It was about erasing her, making her a cautionary tale. Her career, her voice, her truth, all teetered on a knife's edge. She'd poured everything into the architecture of deceit. But now, with the world turning against her, doubt crept in like damp rot. What if she were destroying her children's stability for a fight she couldn't win? What if she was becoming the vengeful woman Clarissa painted her to be? Noah's sleepy voice broke the silence. "Mama?" He stood in the doorway, clutching a blanket, Naomi trailing behind with her giraffe. Imani knelt, pulling them close, their warmth a lifeline. "Why are you sad?" Naomi asked, her small hand touching Imani's cheek. The question pierced her, sharp as a shard of glass. She wasn't sad. She was unraveling. "I'm okay, baby," she lied, kissing their foreheads. She led them back to bed, tucking them in, their steady breathing a rhythm she clung to. As she lingered, watching their chests rise and fall, clarity cut through the fog. This fight wasn't about her pain or Julian's betrayal. It was about Noah and Naomi, about ensuring they grew up in a world where truth mattered, where their father's lies wouldn't define them. She thought of the sand in the yard, shifting under the breeze, and saw Julian's world for what it was, fragile, built on deception. She wouldn't let her children inherit that. Her doubt hardened into resolve, a fire rekindled by love. She called Maya at midnight, her voice steady despite the hour. "They're trying to bury me," she said, "but I'm turning their game against them." Maya's laugh was a spark. "That's my girl. What's the move?" Imani paced, her mind racing. "Their smear campaign is the story now. They're not just attacking me. They're attacking the truth. I want to expose their tactics, show the world how they silence people." Maya's voice lit up. "Genius. We'll feed their dirt to a watchdog group, maybe the Press Freedom Alliance. They'll eat this up." Imani sat at her laptop, the screen a battlefield. She drafted an email to the Press Freedom Alliance, attaching screenshots of the smear posts, IP traces Maya had pulled, and evidence linking them to Clarissa's family's PR firm. "This isn't just my fight," she wrote. "It's about protecting journalists from being crushed by power." Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but with purpose. She wasn't the victim Clarissa expected. She was a warrior, her pen sharper than their lies. Eleanor found her at dawn, the sky a soft bruise outside. "Still fighting?" her mother asked, handing over a mug of tea. Imani nodded, the steam curling like a vow. "I have to, Mama. For the kids. For me." Eleanor's eyes softened, but her voice was steel. "You're not just fighting for you, child. You're fighting for every woman they've tried to erase. Don't stop." Imani stepped onto the porch, the morning air sharp with salt. The yard's sand lay scattered, a reminder of how easily lies could shift. She thought of Julian's threat, his pale face twisted in desperation, Clarissa's smirk, the troll's venom. They thought they could break her, but they'd miscalculated. She wasn't just a mother or a journalist. She was a force, and their attacks had only sharpened her edge. The Charleston morning hummed with purpose, the air sharp with salt as Imani stood on her mother's porch, her phone pressed to her ear. The Press Freedom Alliance had responded, an email promising to review her evidence of Clarissa's smear campaign. The troll's venom still stung, but Imani's fire burned brighter, fueled by the twins' sleepy trust and Eleanor's unyielding wisdom. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was carving a path for every voice silenced by power. Her article, "The Architecture of Deceit," was a loaded gun, but it needed allies to fire true. Maya's voice crackled through the phone, a spark in the dawn. "Imani, we've got a gold mine," she said, her excitement electric. "My guy traced those troll accounts. Half are bots, linked to a PR firm tied to Clarissa's daddy. And I found someone you need to meet." Imani's pulse quickened. "Who?" she asked, gripping the porch railing. "Evan, an old co-worker of Julian's. He's got dirt. Meet him at noon, downtown cafe. He's ready to talk." Imani hung up, her mind racing. The yard below shimmered with sand, stirred by a breeze, a reminder of how fragile her enemy's lies were. She wasn't alone in this fight. Maya's digital sleuthing and the Press Freedom Alliance were her shield, but Evan could be her sword. She dressed quickly, kissing Noah and Naomi as they played with Eleanor, their crayons scattering color across the kitchen table. "Be good for Grandma," she said, her voice soft but her eyes steel. Eleanor nodded, her gaze a silent vow of support. The cafe downtown was a quiet nook, its wooden tables worn smooth by time. Evan sat in a corner, his face gaunt, his eyes darting like a man who'd seen too many shadows. Imani slid into the booth, her journalist's instinct humming. "You worked with Julian," she said, not a question. Evan nodded, his fingers tapping nervously. "He screwed me over," he said, voice low. 2 years ago, he took credit for my designs on a big project. Got me sidelined. Now he's their poster boy for progress. But it's all a sham." He slid a USB drive across the table, its weight heavy with promise. "Emails, contracts, memos," he said. "Proof Julian's role in Clarissa's father's project was bought. PR to clean their dirty money. He's not an architect, he's a prop." Imani's breath caught, her fingers closing around the drive. This was dynamite, enough to crack the foundation of Clarissa's empire. "Why help me?" she asked, searching his face. Evan's jaw tightened. "Because I'm tired of men like him winning. You're not the only one he's erased." Back at the house, Imani and Maya pored over the files. The evidence was damning. Julian's contract was inflated, tied to a shell company under Clarissa's father's control. Maya's eyes gleamed. "This is it, Imani. We've got them." Imani nodded, her mind already drafting a new pitch to the Press Freedom Alliance. "It's not just about my article anymore," she said. "It's about how they silence people. Journalists, whistleblowers, anyone who dares speak. We're exposing the machine." She crafted a letter to the Alliance, her words sharp as a blade. "Clarissa's family isn't just attacking me," she wrote. "They're weaponizing media to bury truth. Here's the proof. Bot accounts, PR contracts, and a whistleblower's testimony. This is a story about power, not just a marriage. She attached Evan's files, Maya's IP traces, and screenshots of the smears. Sending it felt like losing an arrow, straight and true. Eleanor brought tea as Imani worked, her presence a quiet anchor. "You're building something bigger than yourself," her mother said, her voice steady. "But they'll hit harder now. Be ready." Imani nodded, her gaze drifting to the twins, now napping on the couch. Noah's hand clutched Naomi's giraffe, a small fortress of innocence. She was fighting for them, for a world where their father's lies wouldn't cast a shadow. Maya texted, "Alliance is in. They're pitching a piece on media manipulation with you as the centerpiece." Mani's heart raced, a mix of fear and triumph. She wasn't just a target anymore. She was reshaping the battlefield. The sand in the yard caught her eye, scattered by a passing breeze, its patterns fleeting as Clarissa's lies. They thought they could bury her in noise, but she was a signal, cutting through. As night fell, Imani stood on the porch, the stars sharp above. The fight was no longer just hers. It was a beacon for others, a call to stand against power. Evan's courage, Maya's fire, Eleanor's wisdom, they were her army. Clarissa and Julian had underestimated her, but they'd learn soon enough. The truth was gathering strength, and it would break their empire apart. The Charleston air crackled with tension, as if the sky itself sensed the storm breaking. Imani stood in her mother's kitchen, her phone glowing with the National Chronicle's homepage. The architecture of deceit was live, its words a blade slicing through the lies of Clarissa's empire. Hours earlier, the Press Freedom Alliance had dropped their bombshell, a scathing expose of the PR firm's smear campaign against Imani, complete with Evan's files and Maya's traced bots. The internet erupted, nearing justice for Imani trending like wildfire across social media. Imani's heart pounded, a mix of triumph and dread. She'd fired her shot, and the world was listening. Comments flooded in, a tidal wave of support. "Imani's a hero," one read. "She's exposing the real frauds." Another, "Justice for Imani, keep fighting." Strangers shared her story, their voices amplifying hers. The twins played in the living room, oblivious, their laughter a fragile anchor in the chaos. Eleanor watched from the doorway, her eyes gleaming with pride. "You did it, child," she said, her voice steady. "You made them see." But victory came with shadows. Clarissa's family was reeling, their project under scrutiny, their stock plummeting. Imani knew they'd hit back, harder than before. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, reporters, activists, even a talk show host wanting her story. She ignored them, her focus on the twins. Noah's crayon rolled across the floor, trailing sand from the yard, a reminder of how fragile her enemy's foundation was. They'd built their empire on lies, and she'd shaken it to the core. Then Julian called. His name on her screen was a ghost, stirring memories of love long buried. She answered, bracing herself. "Imani," he said, his voice hollow, stripped of its usual polish. "You've ruined everything. The project, my career, gone. What do you want?" The desperation in his tone was a crack in his armor, but Imani felt no pity. She'd seen his true face at LAX, his blonde hair catching the light as he laughed with Clarissa while their family crumbled. "This isn't about what I want, Julian," she said, her voice cold as steel. "It's about what you owe." She paced, the floorboards creaking under her weight. "Here's how this goes," she continued. "Full custody of Noah and Naomi, the house, a trust fund for their education. You don't get to walk away clean." Julian's breath hitched, a sound of defeat. "Imani, I'm sorry," he stammered. But she cut him off. "Sorry doesn't rebuild what you broke. Take the terms or I keep digging." She hung up, her hands steady, her heart a furnace of resolve. This wasn't revenge, it was justice, for her children. Maya texted, "You're trending worldwide. Clarissa's daddy just canceled a press conference. They're crumbling." Imani exhaled, a weightlifter. The Press Freedom Alliance's piece had done more than expose the smears. It had turned Clarissa's tactics into a national scandal. News outlets ran headlines. PR firm caught silencing journalist. Progress scam unraveled. Clarissa's family, once untouchable, was now a cautionary tale. Imani's article wasn't just a story, it was a movement. She stepped onto the porch, the evening air sharp with salt. The yard's sand lay scattered, its patterns erased by the wind, a mirror of Clarissa's collapsing empire. Noah and Naomi's voices drifted from inside, their laughter a melody of hope. Imani's phone buzzed again, a message from Sarah at the Chronicle. Peace is a hit. Legal's clear. Want to write a follow-up? Imani smiled, her fingers itching for the keyboard. She wasn't done yet. A new notification caught her eye. A tweet from a young woman. Imani's story gave me the courage to speak up. Tarari, justice for Imani. The words hit like a spark, igniting something deeper. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was for every woman silenced, every truth buried. She thought of Evan, risking his peace to help her, and Maya, her firebrand ally. They'd turned her solitary battle into a chorus. Eleanor joined her, a shawl around her shoulders. You're shaking the world, child, she said, her voice soft but fierce. Imani nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. I didn't start this to win, Mama, she said. I started it to be free. Eleanor's hand squeezed hers, a silent vow. The stars above burned bright, unyielding, like Imani's truth. The firestorm was still raging, Clarissa's family scrambling, Julian broken, the public roaring. Imani stood at the edge of it all, her pen a torch. She'd exposed their lies, but more importantly, she'd reclaimed her voice. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. She was no longer the woman Julian had tried to erase. She was Imani, a force, and her story was just beginning. The Charleston sunrise painted the sky in hues of gold, a quiet promise of new beginnings. Imani sat at her mother's dining table, now her own, her laptop open to a blank document. Months had passed since the firestorm of her article, and the Press Freedom Alliance's expose had shaken the world. Justice for Imani had faded from headlines, but its echo lingered in her heart. Noah and Naomi's laughter filled the house, their crayons scattering color across the floor, a vivid contrast to the gray of her old life with Julian. Charleston was no longer a refuge. It was home, a foundation rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. Her phone buzzed, a new email from the National Chronicle's editor, Sarah. Your column on corporate ethics is a hit. Readers want more. Imani smiled, her fingers tracing the mug of tea Eleanor had left her. The Chronicle had offered her a regular column after The Architecture of Deceit became a sensation. Its dissection of corporate scams sparking debates nationwide. She wasn't just a journalist now. She was a voice, a beacon for those silenced by power. Each piece she wrote was a brick in a new legacy, one her children could inherit with pride. Julian was a ghost of the past. The industry had turned on him, his name poisoned after the truth came out. Sources whispered he'd been cut from Clarissa's family circle, left to drift in the wreckage of his ambition. His blonde hair and easy charm couldn't save him now. Clarissa herself had vanished from public view, her father's empire battered by lawsuits and scrutiny. Imani felt no joy in their fall, only a quiet justice. She'd won full custody, the house, and a trust fund for the twins' education. Terms Julian had accepted in a defeated scrawl. Her victory wasn't in their ruin, but in her rise. She stepped onto the porch, the morning air sharp with salt. The yard's sand lay smooth, its patterns erased by time, a mirror of the life she'd left behind. Noah and Naomi ran outside, their giggles a melody of freedom. Mama, look! Noah shouted, holding up a seashell dusted with sand. Imani knelt, brushing it clean, her heart swelling. It's beautiful, baby, she said, kissing his forehead. Naomi hugged her leg, her giraffe tucked under one arm. These moments, small, unshakable, were her true triumph. Eleanor joined her, her silver hair glinting in the sun. You've built something real, child, she said, her voice soft but fierce. Not just a story, but a life. Imani nodded, her eyes tracing the horizon. I didn't do it alone, Mama, she said. You, Maya, Evan. You all carried me. Eleanor's hand squeezed hers, a silent vow of pride. The twins' laughter rang out, a reminder of why she'd fought. Not just to expose lies, but to create a world where truth could breathe. Her phone pinged again. A message from a young reader. Your story gave me the courage to call out my boss's fraud. Thank you, Imani. The words hit like a spark, igniting a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Her fight had rippled beyond her, touching lives she'd never meet. She thought of Maya, now leading a digital campaign to protect whistleblowers, and Evan, who'd found peace in a new job, free from Julian's shadow. Her allies had turned her solitary battle into a movement. Imani returned to her laptop, the blank document waiting like a canvas. Her next column would tackle media ethics, a nod to the machine that had tried to crush her. She typed, her words flowing like a river, each sentence a testament to her strength. The twins' voices drifted from the yard, their play a backdrop to her purpose. She wasn't just writing for herself anymore. She was writing for them, for every voice stifled by power. The sand in the yard caught her eye, shifted by Noah's running feet into fleeting shapes. It was no longer a symbol of fragility, but of resilience. Sand could be reshaped, rebuilt, just like her life. Julian had tried to erase her, but she'd carved her name into the world's memory. Clarissa's empire had crumbled, its lies scattered like dust. Imani's truth had endured, a lighthouse in the storm. As the sun climbed higher, Imani paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. A new email arrived from a student journalist. Your courage changed how I see my work. Keep shining. She smiled, her heart full. This was her legacy, not just a story, but a spark that lit fires in others. She leaned back, watching Noah and Naomi chase each other, their laughter a song of hope. The scratches on her heart had healed into strength, her pen a blade that cut through lies. She stood, joining her children in the yard. Mama, build a castle, Naomi squealed, handing her a bucket. Imani laughed, scooping sand, her hand steady. She was no longer the woman who'd stumbled through LAX, broken and betrayed. She was Imani, a mother, a writer, a force. Her story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and the world would keep listening. Imani's journey, from the sting of betrayal to the triumph of truth, has been a firestorm of courage and heart. Her story isn't just hers. It's a call to stand tall, to wield truth against lies. What did her fight spark in you? Share your thoughts, your reflections, your predictions, your own stories of resilience. Drop them in the comments or wherever you're reading this, and let me know where and when you joined Imani's battle. Thank you for walking this path with her, for rooting for her light to shine. Your support fuels these tales. Stay tuned for more stories of unbreakable spirits. We'll meet again soon.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.